Hello everyone to a new version of the Academy on Air. Today's topic, how to use AdWords attribution to better optimize for the customer journey. In the previous sessions, you have learned how to optimize your mobile user experience. You probably have already done some changes to your site to make it faster and hence make it easier for your customers to convert on your site. And last week we spoke about mobile measurement, how to set up your measurement correctly for mobile conversions or in general conversions. But one important topic was actually also attribution. And we put this into an extra session today, and we're going to talk about AdWords attribution in particular today. A quick heads up, we have presented this topic before, so you may be familiar with some of the slides and some of the content, but stick with us. We also will go into like specific dates. For example, we have a special on Black Friday.
Nonetheless, it might be handy to have a small repetition of some content.
Exactly. The two of us are Patrick and Justus.
Yeah, hi guys.
And we are attribution experts in Google's European headquarters in Dublin. So we're going to start off today. We're going to talk about why attribution is important. Then we're going to talk about what attribution specifically is, how to change to a non-elastic attribution model, and most importantly, what to do next. But let's go very broadly into it. So as you may have heard from Mairead or Indre or Dave before, is that more than half the web traffic now comes from smartphone and tablets, that is mobile devices. This poses certain challenges to us as marketers because users can literally search from anywhere, anytime, and that includes a lot more interactions and more complex consumer paths across different devices. And what we know is actually that 75% of online adults start an activity on one device and end up on another. For example, you might browse on your mobile device while you are in traffic or on the bus. And you might end up your customer journey on a desktop or tablet device, or even switch between all three back and forth. However, the way we have been attributing success in the past years is that we analyzed only the final touch point, meaning before the customer converted, we looked at the last interaction and said that is the one that drove success, that is the one that drove conversions. Now, however, if we look at the full customer journey, we might actually get more insights and successfully target our audience a bit better. And we're going to go into detail about that. One good example is if you think about your vacation, maybe you're thinking already about 2018, and then think back whenever you have booked a vacation. Have you ever done it straight away in one sitting on one device? Hardly ever anymore.
It does not work for me.
Does not happen, right?
Yeah.
You have to double check with your partner, you have to double check with your travel mates, you go and review different options, need to check flights. So chances are there's a complex consumer journey until you do the final booking. And it might look like this. So let's say within a week's time, you search for best tropical vacation, right? And decided, hey, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico. Then you search for a bed and breakfast. Okay, you need to find accommodation. You found accommodation but you're not quite sure yet. And it takes you a week or even longer to finally book that specific bed and breakfast. So there's a lot of different interactions along the line. And this might happen actually on different devices, as we just said. So you may actually sit on the couch and browse casually on your phone. On Tuesday, you do it with your work laptop. And chances are you even could convert on a different laptop at home. So these interactions are fragmented or seem to be fragmented as they happen on different devices, different times, different locations. Attribution basically is connecting these dots. So connecting the dots between all those different interactions in any given customer journey. We took an example in travel here. This could just as well be a retail check. This could be when you do an inquiry for a lead submission. Let's say you inquire for an insurance or really any other business. And this works both for B2C and B2B models. So attribution will help you to connect all these dots and have full view of the customer path. And the thing is, once you understand how these different touch points work together, you can actually influence it and make investments correctly according to those different interactions in order to get the best outcome in the end. So that is why attribution is really important. But now let's go into depth what attribution actually specifically is.
Thanks, Patrick. So I have the pleasure of walking you through what that concept actually means. So as Patrick said, it's all about a path. And alongside this path, not only the last interaction, which is the last click or the last interaction model that we all have been using for a very, very long time. Not that last interaction is the only meaningful interaction, right? So using a last click interaction model or an attribution model would assume that only this last interaction is the sole reason why someone is buying, right? And we all know that this is not true, right? The vacation example made it very clear. So this is where the attribution modeling, the conversation comes in, and where attribution models can help us making the right decision of where to actually put this conversion. If it's not the last interaction, where should it go then? So what an attribution model basically does, it basically distributes these conversions according to a rule, right? It's something that you make an assumption that, hey, in most cases, the purchasing cycle is, for example, like in cold calling, where you say, okay, the first interaction, that getting the right customer on the phone, that's a very tough one. That is something that if it works, it should get a bump up. It should get a premium. Or for example, the last interaction, where if you actually get the signature of the customer on the contract, that's also something that's really hard to achieve. So if it actually works, it should get a bump up. And all of a sudden, we have an assumption of where this conversion, where this purchase should actually give its credit to. In this case, it would be the first, or like it would be bump up for the first and the last interactions, and all the interactions in between, which should get some credit as well. But these kinds of assumptions are basically what make an attribution model. So in this case, going back to the tropical vacations example, the first click is initiating a process. For example, the last click was the little palm tree bed and breakfast reservation, and it's just before the purchase. And then the middle clicks basically merge everything together. So it's basically one coherent story. So if we pull this out of the vacation example and into a very tangible example, which is something that a lot of you are probably facing every day, if we assume that we have 3 campaigns that are triggered by 3 keyword sets. So in the first one, we have the great tech gifts. In the second one, we have the highly rated tablet. So we're getting closer and closer to the actual product, which is the Nexus 9 tablet. If we apply the last click model, all of the credit, all of the 12 conversions that come out in the end of these paths go to the Nexus 9 tablet, so to the branded campaign, so to speak. What does it actually mean? It means that we are heavily focusing on a market of, let's say, queries that is $200 million big, which is a huge number. But if you know that the highly rated tablet market, so let's say the volume of queries that are around highly rated tablets, not particular products already, is a lot bigger than the actual product market, then it's very clear that you're missing out on something. And if you look at the more generic queries, like the great tech gifts, it becomes even more clear that the 20 billion market is like obviously a lot bigger than the 200 million market, even though a Nexus 9 tablet can be a great tech gift. So we can play in that area. These queries are really important to us. They could lead to a purchase, but we are using the last click model, and therefore we're optimizing our campaigns, our keywords, our ads around the product and around the Nexus 9 tablet. So we don't even care about people that actually search for great tech gifts. We don't even build ads for them because it only looks like the Nexus 9 campaign is working, the great tech gift campaign isn't working because it's not really there, because we're not incentivized by the last click model to build campaigns for it. So what could be an alternative? As I said, there's other attribution models that you can use. And this position-based model, which aligns nicely with the story I just told about cold calling, is basically such a model that you can and should use going away from the last click model, because it gives you better visibility on what's actually going on. So in this case, it could be that due to that 40-20-40 distribution assumption, we actually see that a lot of queries come in through the great tech gifts, through the highly rated tablet, and then eventually convert. And then we distribute these 12 conversions not by just giving everything to the last click, to the branded campaign, but we actually honor also the help of the Great Tech Gifts campaign. And all of a sudden, these campaigns don't look that bad anymore. And they actually help you. And you understand that these are actually the campaigns that drive a lot of value in your overall business success.
So Justus, when I do this, let's say I make the change from a last click model to a position-based model.
Yes.
How long do I have to wait until I see results coming through to these generic campaigns that I previously didn't see?
So that's a pretty good question, obviously. So usually we would say that it takes about one feedback loop, right? So usually if you go into your AdWords accounts and you look into a report that's called a time-like report, you will see how long it usually takes people from the first impression of an ad or the first click on an ad to actually then go through their process, like clicking on a campaign twice or on an ad twice, and then convert. So usually we would say this is the time it takes for a new campaign to ramp up. Problem is only that for most customers, they only have branded campaigns in their account. So they don't actually build for the whole consumer journey yet, which might be a lot longer than what you see in that report.
So it might be that they have paused Great Tech Gifts before just because there was no ROI associated with it.
Exactly.
So in this case, we would have to reactivate that keyword.
Yes. Okay. So look into that time-like report, which gives you a good feeling on how long people take to actually make a purchase. But be aware that if you build new campaigns that are further up the funnel, those might actually prolong or like cover a longer path, a longer fraction of the consumer path. Right? So this number might actually increase, which is a good thing because it shows you that you're capturing more of your consumer's journey. All right. A big question that both of us always get, pretty much always when we run events or we talk to customers, is how does data-driven attribution actually work? What does that do? And this slide is perfect for explaining it in a very simple way. Let's go through it very quickly. Let's assume that we have 3 campaigns and we have a lot of people going through that particular consumer journey. So we have a lot of people going through campaign A, campaign B, campaign C. And then we do a split test. So we say a lot of people going through A, B, and C, and there's another fraction of people that don't go through A, they only visit B and C, right? So in the end, we need a lot of people because eventually we want this conversion rate that comes out in the end to be statistically significant, right? We don't want this to be the result of chance or luck. So we can actually draw conclusions from it. So let's assume that we have these 2 paths that walk side by side. If people go through A, B, and C and come up with a conversion rate of 3%, and we see that people that go through B and C only winding up at 2%, we can make the assumption that the difference, because everything else was equal beside campaign A, we can assume that the difference in conversion rates, so the 2 versus the 3%, actually stems from people not interacting with campaign A. It might be that campaign A led to a website or led to a landing page that had a lot of very important information on a product that actually eventually helps people to make a decision, right? So what we do with data-driven attribution is we basically create this A/B test across all keywords, across all ads, and also across all devices in your AdWords account. So it's basically not magic, it's just statistics. And it works for you and it works for free.
So when you explain this potentially to customers or colleagues, it's kind of hard to use this statistical argument. So a good analogy would be if you have a sports team. Let's say you are the Barcelona FC and you have Lionel Messi on your team. So basically it's asking yourself, in all the games that Messi played, how many more goals did we score as a team versus those games when he didn't play? And that difference is basically then the value of Messi that he brings to the entire team. Or in this case, the query grade tech gifts brings an additional 1% in conversion rate.
Exactly. Also, feel free to ask questions later on. We can answer some questions at the end of this hangout. All right. So this brings us to the next question we also get all the time is which attribution model should I actually choose for my client? And you see that it's very obvious that last click and first click are not an option anymore. Why is that? It's because they're basically only giving you a very basic, a very, well, it's almost like you're driving with one eye closed, right? They're giving you not a full visibility on what customers actually do on your account. They don't give you the best visibility, right? And first click and last click are both equally bad because they only capture one touch point, even though you have a lot of them. I think on average, you touched on 75% of people actually going from one, like taking an action after like going from one device to another. It's actually on average, it's 5 interactions that people have before making a purchase. And with first and last click, it's basically like if we assume that 5 interactions is the average, they're basically kicking out 4 out of these 5 interactions and only look at 20% of the freely available data. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like making a purchasing decision for a house and you've only seen 1 out of 5 rooms. And that's just not good, right? If you want to optimize, if you want to help your customer grow, neglecting that 80% of the data is just not there, that's not good decision making, right? So therefore, we recommend everything that is not last or first click. Data-driven is obviously the best model of all of them because for data-driven, we can do A/B testing. We don't have to make an assumption that, hey, your customer's interaction and purchasing behavior is like cold calling, where like the first and the last interaction are equally hard and hard to get, or in time decay, where everything that is closer to the point of purchase becomes more and more important, or linear, where we just distribute across all the campaigns. It's basically data-driven that we can test everything. We don't have to make assumptions. And every time you don't have to make an assumption, but can actually look at things and test things, it's the best possible thing that you can get. So data-driven, whenever it's possible, please choose it. If that's not the case, I would say go between position-based and time decay, right? So this is a very clear guidance from us. All right, how do we actually change to non-elastic models?
So it's very easy for you. There's a 3-step journey, and in total, it could take you less than 5 minutes to make that decision. It's very, very simple, right? So select the best model for your business. We just said data-driven is the one you should choose. Now, bear in mind, and you said this earlier, you need to have a lot of data, really, because we need to have enough data to compare these 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, or hundreds of different paths.
Yeah, we don't want to guess. We want to have statistical significance for these things.
So currently we have a minimum requirement of 600 conversions, 15,000 clicks over a monthly period. So data-driven, but if you don't meet those, if you don't have a 600 conversion threshold, you can actually choose any of the 3 here in the middle, really. But to be honest with you, the linear one doesn't cut it, really, does it? Linear is just too easy, just too much of a simplification. Not every step is as important as the other. So what we recommend is a choice between time decay and position-based, so either one of the 2.
It's almost like if you think about the offline world, when a customer walks into a store 3 times, let's say, and the first time, like he gets all the information, the second time, he's only coming back to check if something is important, is working or not, like some of the tech specs, but not super important. He's just walking by. And then the last time he's actually buying. Not every interaction is equally important. That's why linear is probably too simple.
Right. It's still better than last click and first click. Sure. But it's kind of like not the best option. So how do you make that choice though? So there's an easy framework we developed for you to make that choice very simply. It's basically saying if you are growth oriented, or if your customers are oriented towards growth, you should choose a position-based model. If you have a conservative growth strategy, you should use time decay. Now, why is that? So position-based puts the most value on the first interaction and the last interaction. If you are interested in growth, you are interested in acquiring new customers and consumers all the time, which is so the first interaction with those consumers has to have a high significance. And that is the case for the position-based versus the time decay. If most customers or consumers know you already, you don't need to spend a lot of money or time on acquisition. You basically just have to re-engage those customers over and over again. Hence, the last interaction is the most important.
I think that's most relevant for people that do a lot of offline advertising.
Yeah.
Right.
Few checkups are here. Like if you're new to the market, likely you're growth oriented, you're a market leader, you might choose a time decay model. If you have a high investment product, you might be interested in like getting into the customers' heads very early in the journey. If you're a low investment product, that you might have like shorter journeys and more spontaneous decisions. Or high competition and low competition. How much do you need to defend your position with customers? So yeah, so let's say you have chosen your position-based, your time decay, your data-driven model. How do you actually change it? It's very, very simple. It's 2 clicks in AdWords. So on the top of AdWords, in the new AdWords interface, you'll see in the conversion settings, where you enter a conversion action. So in the conversion settings of your conversion, be that your purchase or your lead submission,
Sign up.
You, at the very bottom here, you choose the attribution model. So you select data-driven if you have it available, or any of the other we just recommended, time decay, position-based.
An important note, data-driven will just magically appear if it becomes available.
Exactly.
Right? If it's not there, choose one of the other models.
Yeah. So you change the model there, and from that moment onwards, basically all your conversions in this conversion action are non-last click and will be redistributed, as we saw in the example of great tech gifts, highly rated tablets, Nexus 9 tablets that Justus gave early on. So very simple. This step can take you less than a minute. But at that time, you actually changed your reporting a bit, right? So when you use multi-touch models, you see fractional conversions. Your conversion will be split apart. So if you have 2 interactions, that conversion might be distributed 50-50 on those 2 interactions.
So there might be cases where you actually sold 1.5 lawnmowers.
Or stuff like that per campaign.
Which is like becomes clear if you think about, we need to split these conversions apart and then distribute them across campaigns. So it's just a new way of looking at things. But eventually in analytics, for example, you'll see like a whole lawnmower if you're selling that.
Yeah, and in total it will still be like, so the entirety in total the account conversions won't change. Like if you had 100 conversions before, you'll see still 100 conversions. It's just redistributed towards different campaigns.
Absolutely.
Another thing that people will see, and this is a simplified example, you have maybe a non-brand campaign and a brand campaign, right? And previously under last click, you may see 100 conversions on brand campaign and 90 conversions on non-brand campaign, which results in the following CPAs of 110. Now, if you change to a data-driven model, for example, all of a sudden you might see more conversions coming through the non-brand campaign, that's more generic terms, and less conversions from the brand campaign. As such, by pure math, you will have a lower CPA for the non-brand campaign and a higher CPA for the brand campaign. So be prepared that these changes will happen, right? So if you're optimizing for a certain cost per conversion or CPA, expect for that transition period a slight change.
But on an account level, it'll stay exactly the same because we're not taking any conversions out. The cost doesn't change. So both pieces of the CPA equation really don't change on an account level.
Yeah, so you see on the bottom line, 190 conversions on total and a CPA of 53 on total still stays the same.
Yes.
Now, and there's one more thing that kind of can freak you out maybe when you change on that very day. And this is particularly true when you have a long conversion path. So what we have seen in the past, if you change on any given day, and this is kind of illustrated here, the green bar is the day when you changed. Now, all of a sudden you see on that very day, less conversions coming through. So let's say you changed on a Tuesday, and on the Wednesday, you see all of a sudden only half your conversions. What happened? You didn't lose conversions. What happened was that a good bit of that conversion has been redistributed to the days before. Right? So there might be 10% going to yesterday, another 10% to the day before yesterday, and the rest of the 30% to the previous week.
I mean, it's called a consumer journey for a reason, and journeys can take time. So again, this is where the time-like report in AdWords really helps you out understanding how far back these conversions probably will be attributed. And that can range from a month to only a few days, right? But this is not a bug. This is intended behavior. And it actually is able to give you insights on how long this consumer journey really is. So it's a feature, not a bug.
And the good thing is that if you look at the yellow bar there, from other days, and that you will see the conversions coming back to a regular level, because future conversions partly will depend on clicks that happened on that day, right? So you'll see that bar filling up. Again, no loss in conversions will occur. And now there's one really interesting thing that we saw, particularly for Black Friday or any other seasonal event.
Yeah,
really,
I mean,
right?
with the holidays coming up, this is something that is, as I said, not a bug, but a feature. So you should make use of this DDA or multi-touch attribution model stuff, because we can uncover some really cool things.
Right, and what we saw actually last year, so we looked at last year's Black Friday, and this is what we usually saw for any given retailer, right? Regular sales throughout the days, and then on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, all of a sudden, boom,
everything goes up.
Increase, right? But how much of that increase is actually due to that very day?
Yeah.
So what we saw is that basically on a non-last click model, the sales on that very day didn't look too great. If you redistribute all of those conversions to the previous days when people researched, we saw that actually the spike wasn't that big. So what the conclusion from that is increasing your budget only on Black Friday or increasing your presence only on Black Friday doesn't really cut it. People are doing the research in the weeks ahead of time.
Yeah, and sometimes you would be surprised, and you can actually uncover this in your own account. Actually, you can ask, what we're going to present to you, you can ask your Google representative to help you do this analysis. So please note that down, call these guys up, send them an email. They can help you. They have been trained.
And this doesn't work for Black Friday anyway, so this works for others. So Cyber Monday, we saw the exact same thing, right? So reduction on the non-last click model and redistribution of conversions back to the previous days. So what we saw is basically, an increase in conversions on the previous days, on the research days, which makes sense, and a reduction on the non-last click model.
On the actual day. So the actual day, the big Black Friday, most people have made up their minds. They have their list of things they want to buy on that one day when everything is cheaper. Yeah. So they make their research, put it down, and then make the actual purchase. So this would lead, under a last click model, it would actually lead to a false assumption. It would lead to the assumption that this very day, so Black Friday, that Friday is actually the most important day to put up advertisement. But that's actually not the case. You want to influence them when they actually go and research for what they actually want to buy on that day.
And so here's something we saw as an example that we did. So the Black Friday here is pointed out, and you see that it sees a 7% decrease in conversion. And look at the time period beforehand, where all of a sudden all the other days increased in conversions under a data-driven model.
So this is the difference between in conversions between the last click model and the data-driven model, just to give you an idea of what it actually shows.
Yeah. So we saw that this whole November period was actually made for research, and under that data-driven model gained conversions compared to a last click model. Right, and the same thing you see again here in the Christmas period, in the last week of Christmas. And do you apply this to any big event, really?
Absolutely. And I mean, for this advertiser, it was very clear that they had started advertising only a week before. And you can see here that that week before is only mildly green. This is not where people do their big research. They do their research on the 2 weekends in the beginning of November. So if they would have shown display ads, video ads, and good search ads on these dates, they would probably have had a lot more sales. And this is something you can't uncover with last click. This is something you can only do with data-driven or multi-touch attribution models. Exactly. Otherwise, you are blind to these kinds of things. And
mind yourself, we haven't said this. Actually, this works cross-device, right?
Yeah.
So our attribution models in AdWords, they work cross-device. So you actually see that consumer journey across mobile, tablet, desktop, you name it. Great. So that's the benefits and how to change a non-last click model, what to watch out for. What are the next steps, Justus?
Yeah, sure. Happy to walk you through. So the first thing is absolutely look into these reports that we can generate now. We just showed you one of these reports, actually looking into how we can not only build for the last interaction, but how can we basically build for the whole consumer journey. First of all, understanding how long that consumer journey is, how many interactions do we have, and then build your ads, build your keywords, build your campaigns alongside this kind of consumer journey, right? So that's the first thing that you need to do. Use the insights. How to do this? Look into how conversions shift if you're using AdWords conversion tracking, how these conversions shift from the desktop to mobile. A lot of the times people don't really understand the value of mobile until they have used cross-device conversion tracking and a non-last click attribution model, because then it really shows that mobile is very often at the beginning of the user journey when people stand at the bus stop, they casually browse, they find something, and then they later remember it and purchase it on their laptop. Also, please use these upper funnel keywords, like the generic ones. Remember the 200 billion market for the great tech gifts? These campaigns, they are probably in your account already, but they're paused because they never looked like they would be working. But you had a good hunch building them because you thought, hey, probably there's a lot of people actually looking for these things. But then no conversion there because all the conversions went to the brand campaign, right? To the last interaction, which is often brand. So now unpause these campaigns, go up the funnel. Now, just in front of Christmas, start doing it as soon as possible because it will help you capturing more of the Christmas relevant traffic. So go across devices and also up the funnel in general. Right? So this is basically showing you the importance. A lot of these interactions, 75% of people start on a different device than they end their consumer journey. The second thing is, as I said, expand to non-brand keywords and increase the CPCs for these keywords so you actually get some visibility and some impression share on these things.
I have a question here, but like the CPCs and generic keywords can be really expensive.
Sure.
How should I go about that?
Honestly, I think this is where smart bidding really comes in and where you can leverage the real-time bidding option of smart bidding. So Google Smart Bidding actually understands if there is a customer that is super relevant, that really is looking for the solution that you as an advertiser are offering. And then we can, in real time, so as soon as someone types in the query, we understand what they want to have, what you have, and we can increase the bid only for that particular customer.
So you're saying instead of like bidding, I don't know, an outlandishly expensive keyword all across the board, I just say like, I want these niche specific users and only for those at the time.
Absolutely. So it's a huge efficiency game. I would recommend you all to use smart bidding techniques to actually not bid on a keyword basis, very broad. I know that these keywords can be extremely expensive. Using smart bidding, you're basically targeting the guys who are actually interested in you and are interesting to you.
And they might actually be not as expensive anymore, given that you get more return from.
Yeah, you get more value. So in the end, the ROI is there, right? This is leading us to our next step. Nice transition. So what we see today is that most of our partners are actually using a lot of time only driving up or down the bids. Right. That is a task that really takes a lot of time. And in the end, you can only update your bids for a particular keyword. And then, for example, the keyword tablet, which is probably very expensive, will be like that bid for that keyword will be applied across the board for everybody who eventually clicks on that ad. And that is really where this really expensive keyword perception comes from. And this is, by the way, where we can help you out. And this is why I talk about smart bidding. So what we have is something that no one else has. We have an understanding of the person and what they're thinking, of the person that is typing in a query as they're typing it in, right? So during that time, we're the only guys who can actually pick that up. No third-party solution, no self-made script can actually pick that up. So we can do real-time bidding. And the way we can understand what people are actually thinking is because we have a lot of signals from these people. Most of these people are signed in, a lot of these people are signed in, or we have some interactions with them across the web, be it through the GDN network, be it through Gmail, Maps, wherever they are. We have a good understanding what they want. So be assured that we will only bid higher for the guys who are actually important to you. Right?
And we're going to talk about smart bidding next week, as it is so important. Just very quickly, in general, let's say I don't want to use smart bidding. Right? Could I make changes to, let's say, a keyword when I know it's for the first position, the second position? Can I make bid adjustments for position in the journey?
You can make bid adjustments for positions. That's not a problem. Yeah, you can, like, there's bid strategies that you can leverage for that.
Okay, but smart bidding would be a better way to do it.
Smart bidding would be better, because eventually you don't want to be, so for some people that are not that interesting for you, it's not necessarily important to be on number one all the time, spending all that money. It's really important to be there when it counts, when are the right people that really are interested in your solution. Otherwise, you would be wasting money on people that are not really interested into you.
And so far, we have been, with our bid adjustment, we've been optimizing for that last interaction, that last one. So it was like one interaction only. Now we have 5 or 10 or 15. Absolutely. And it's kind of more and more complex to actually handle all that information.
So really, if you want to bid for a non-last click model framework, so if you bid on, or like you used to run on last click, you only saw this one interaction on one device for one keyword or one ad. Now you have visibility over the whole consumer journey. So you would need to set the bids at every stage. Not possible, right? It's taken even longer than it already does today. So this is another great reason why you should switch to smart bidding or automated bidding. Like, for example, ECBC is probably the easiest way to get into smart bidding, right?
Cool, and that leads us to Q&A. So you have submitted questions already, and we're going to look into those now. So when importing conversions from Google Attribution, Google Analytics, is the attribution other than last click model defined in Google AdWords still working? Yes. So when you import conversions from Google Analytics, you will, if there have been like 2 or 3 interactions on AdWords before, attribution still works. So attribution AdWords works for both AdWords conversion tracking and imported goals from Google Analytics.
Exactly. Michelle is asking, are the time lag reports only useful for e-commerce sites? Absolutely not. They're important for pretty much every advertiser that we have that runs stuff on AdWords, and probably also on other tools, because they give you visibility on how long people take from the first interaction to the last interaction. So they basically give you a time frame that you have as an advertiser to influence the decision-making of this person. Right? Show them the right ads, show them the right messaging, apply something like the see, think, do, care framework, where you understand that you first need to influence them, then say, hey, this is my solution that I have, and then provide them with the information they need to make a good purchasing or sign up, or like whatever decision you want them to make. Right? So it's not only e-commerce, it's important for everybody.
Then Faye is asking, hey, if 3 campaigns contributed to a conversion, so 1, 2, 3, does every campaign see 1 conversion? No, you would actually split those up. So you'd see 0.3 conversions for each of these 3 campaigns. So we'll split that 1 conversion up so you don't see a duplication of conversions. That's very important. Maya asked whether AdWords can track cross-device. Yes, it can. We answered that a bit late. And then eventually, what are the cons or pros for using only Google Analytics tracking? So what if I don't have the cross-device capability with AdWords conversion tracking, and I use only imported goals on Google Analytics? That is fine if that works for you, right? If it's too much hassle for you to import an extra, insert an extra code, as in from Google AdWords conversion tracking, you can use Google Analytics just as well. But you will not have the cross-device capability. So that's kind of the drawback on it. But it's more about like how much additional value comes from putting that code on your website.
Absolutely. Good question from Dan on smart bidding. He says it's a great solution not to waste time, but what if we don't have the conversion volume that we would need? So usually we recommend for things like target ROAS or target CPA to have between 30 and 50 conversions over a 30-day window. Not to say that it can't work before that, but it's actually a good recommended thing because the algorithm in the back needs to pick up the pattern that actually goes on, right? I think in these cases, using a form of smart bidding that's a little bit more basic, that is eCPC, so enhanced CPC, that will help you like move the bids up a little bit or the bids down a little bit, depending on the importance of the user that you have in front of you. That is something that you can use even before. And we're working on improving our smart bidding algorithms to actually give you the option to start even earlier, and our systems are getting better every day.
And again, we're going to go into details next week on smart bidding specifically, so tune in then again for more details on that.
Absolutely.
Paul is asking, should I increase the conversion points, include lesser value actions, so-called micro conversions, right? Let's say I have a macro conversions of transactions, right? I get about 200 transactions on a monthly basis, so not enough for data-driven attribution. Yes. Should I include something like form submissions or newsletter signups where I get maybe 1,000 conversions per month in order to have data-driven attribution available? It is really up to you. Generally, we would recommend work with the macro conversions if it's not on a very low level. So if you have more than 30 per month, that's okay, right? If you, however, feel I can't really make decisions on this, then yeah, include micro conversions if you have them available. However, use those micro conversions only if they're meaningful, right? And if you can draw a connection between the micro conversions and the macro conversion. For example, if people can sign up for a free trial, there's a good connection that these people eventually will convert to like the paid version of your product or service. However, if you track the micro conversion of like somebody who spent a minute on my website, that's maybe not so meaningful to the eventual transaction or purchase.
Basically, create a conversion rate between, for example, in this case, the sign up for the free trial and then the real paid version. There's probably a conversion rate connecting these two. So as long as this conversion rate is reasonably big, you can use it as a proxy. That is actually also true for the question Dan had before. So what if I don't have enough conversions for the 30 days? You can choose a conversion action that is not the final transaction or conversion, but something that is more up the funnel, like a sign up, like a free trial. But like we are going to optimize for that free trial, not for the paid version. So make sure that you do a lot of work in actually leading these people from the free trial to the paid version, because we are going to optimize for the free trial in this case, and you have to build a bridge for these people. One question from George, and I think this is our last question. Unfortunately, we're running out of time a little bit. In one account, you can set more than one conversion action, right? So for example, for a sign up and for a purchase, can we have different models? And would you recommend having different models? What do you think?
Well, if you have, that depends really on you, right? You most likely don't optimize for both of them. If you do, it's recommended to use the same model.
But you can choose one for each.
Yeah, like you can choose like a data-driven model for your flight conversions and a position-based model for your hotel conversions, right? Yeah. If you like to use position-based for both, that's up to you, but it's definitely possible to use different models for two different
conversions. It really depends on how people are interacting with your website and with your business. It really comes down to that, right?
And if you have data-driven available for both, go for data-driven for both.
Absolutely.
So this is AdWords attribution. If you have more questions, go and talk to your Google representative. They're all trained and have more insights than we could actually cover in these 40 minutes. We saw a very large spike, particularly in the European markets and all across the world, in the adoption of attribution specifically this year. So it's a large trend. We strongly recommend you moving with that trend, right? And kind of with what we announced around what we have in plan for cross-channel attribution even next year, this is going to be more and more important.
It's becoming a standard, really. It's an industry standard, like becoming already. If you can take a look at the Google Marketing Next recording that's on YouTube, where a lot of these things that you are talking about will be covered as well.
Cool.
All right, everybody.
Super. That's us. Thank you very much for tuning in. And again, next week, we're going to talk about smart bidding and how it will work. So conversion-based bidding strategies.
Be sure to tune in. See you, everybody.
Bye.